I'm Davy, and I'm awesome! And welcome to Davy's Awesome Stories, where I tell funny stories from my past or go on a rant in an effort to make you laugh. So in the past, I have told some stories about my dad before. So here we go. My dad was very, very strange in many ways. He had a lot of idiosyncrasies. One of them was whenever we went to an ethnic restaurant. Meaning, like, if we went to Chinese food or Mexican food, his voice would change sometimes. Like, I've done the impressions of my dad before, which a lot of people who know my dad and me say is pretty close. Like, how my dad just has that dramatic voice no matter what he says. Like, the most mundane things he has to get dramatic with. Like, for example, hello, my name is David Martinez, and I would like $20 on pump number 4. But I think I was about 14, 15 years old the first time I really noticed this. We had this favorite Chinese food restaurant that we would go to all the time. It was a great little restaurant. Not only did they have great food, but their green tea was really good. I don't know what about their green tea was so much better than most people's, but it was. And they had just a great menu, and most of the time I have a normal whenever I go somewhere. It's the General Tso chicken. That's like one of my favorite things in the world. But here they had so many good things, I would change it up. Get Peking duck, get the General Tso chicken, whatever. But every time we went there, it was the same thing. My dad would start talking about when he went to China. Because my dad was in the Navy. He sailed all over the world. He's, according to him, been to every country 3 times. Do not try to inform him that that's not possible. It won't end well for you. But it's easy to believe that he's been to, like, the main countries. He's been to Japan, he's been to China, he's been to Australia, he's been to Germany, he's been to France, he's been to England. It makes sense because he was in the Navy for 11 years, and pretty much his entire career he spent on some kind of a boat, whether it was an aircraft carrier, a little bit of time in a submarine, whatever. So every time we went to Chinese food, no matter what anybody else was trying to talk about, he would somehow bring the conversation back to him being in China and everything he knows about Chinese culture. And then what would happen that was really weird was every time we went to this Chinese food place, which was a lot, me and my family, we all really loved Chinese food. But every time it was his turn to order, his voice would change. The server would come by, ask what they could get us, and suddenly he would be like, "Yes, I'd like the sesame chicken." And even though I'd heard him do that probably 100,000 times, finally it dawned on me. Why do you do that? Do what? That thing where your voice gets a little higher, teensy bit racist every time you order Chinese food. David, I am not racist against Chinese people. I know you're not, I've been to China. I know you have, you've told me many times. Yes, Dad, I know, you tell us every time we come here, but it's just, they loved me there, David, because I showed respect. Yes, Dad, I'm not saying that you're You know how you show respect in China? Yes, Dad, you told me. You burp at the end of the meal. Basically, this went on and on for the rest of the meal, for me daring to point it out that he starts talking like he's Chinese whenever he orders his Chinese food. It's weird. Which again, with my dad, it wasn't mean-spirited, it wasn't even disrespectful. I'm really convinced to this day that he doesn't realize he does this, even though we pointed it out. Because since then, my mom would laugh about it, my brother would laugh about it. Basically, once I broke that glass, they started noticing that every time we went to eat Chinese food, he couldn't order his food without doing a weird Chinese accent. But like I stress, if you ever meet my dad, and you go to have Chinese food with him, and he does this, don't point it out. Because you will spend the remainder of your time there listening to him defend how much he loves Chinese people. But it didn't stop there. We also had our favorite little Mexican food restaurant, which I don't think is there anymore, sadly. And every time we went there, he would do the exact same thing. The only difference would be, instead of him talking about Mexico and all the differences between us and Mexico, which he would do sometimes, he'd mostly talk about what it was like for him growing up. Because the truth is, we are part Mexican. And he's definitely more Mexican than I am, because his dad was full-blood Mexican, his mom was part Mexican, so I'm not going to do the math there. As far as we go, I guess a third. I'm not sure. My mom was definitely not part Mexican. My mom was as white as it gets. So white that she was white! My mom was so white she was convinced that she was part Cherokee. But my dad would talk about what it was like growing up in the 70s being half Mexican, half white. It wasn't easy, and he would go on and on about it every time we went to eat Mexican food. And just like getting Chinese food, when it came time to give his order, suddenly his voice would change.
Yes, I'll have the carne asada plate with a couple extra flour tortillas.
Now, this was not long after I'd realized the thing about the way he orders Chinese food. So I couldn't help but notice that to order his Mexican food, he suddenly got this really thick Mexican accent. His normal voice is not like a Mexican accent, it's more like a Clint Eastwood accent. But me being young and stupid, had to point it out. Dad, this is like the Chinese food thing all over again.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you were talking normal the whole time, and then this guy comes over to take your food order, and suddenly you're like a full-blown Mexican.
I am Mexican.
I know you are, Dad. Our last name's Martinez. I know we're all Mexican.
I grew up in the 70s. Half Mexican.
I know. You've talked about your childhood many times.
My name is David Martinez.
Dad, I know you're Mexican. I know you're more Mexican than I am. I know you look more Mexican than me. Funny enough, though, your gene pool makes you look Italian, but still, I'm just saying, for some reason, whenever we go to eat some kind of ethnic food, like Chinese or Mexican, your accent changes as soon as you're ordering your food. And it's weird. When you order Chinese food, suddenly you get a Chinese accent. When you order Mexican food, suddenly you get a Mexican accent. Next time we go to McDonald's, are you going to talk Scottish?
Yes, I'll be having the Big Mac, Lottie. And an apple pie!
And again, this didn't end well because this basically led to 2 hours of him telling me in many different ways to shut up. Now you guys may be going like, what was he like at other ethnic food places? I don't know. I never tried Indian food until after I moved out. Never went to one with him. Never tried sushi until I moved out. Never went to one with him. Had one chance to go to like a pub with him and get some fish and chips, but I kind of backed out because I was willing to bet money that when the time came, it would have gone something like,
oh yes, I'll have the fish and chips. I believe that would be smashing.
So there you have it. That's my story video this week. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit that little bell so you get notifications for when I post new videos, and leave a comment. Tell me some of the weird things that your parents do. Love you guys.